30 seconds and counting.
There were plenty of years where there were guys who would dread being drafted by the Buffalo Bills. Not anymore.
Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 25 seconds.
Brandon Beane realizes they're in a window of 2 to 3 years max to get this done while the iron's still hot. And getting Von Miller into that situation was big for the Bills.
10, 9.
Oh, baby.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Great interview, guys.
What is up, Buffalo Fanatics? Z-Bot here with you, live on the Buffalo Fanatics YouTube channel on a Monday night. And that, of course, can only mean one thing. It is the Smoke Break, powered by BetUS. Well, it is the week. Oh, is the mic's off? Of course it is. Why not? Sure.
You'd think one of these days I'll figure it out. Thumbs up, thumbs down, in the middle where we at. Unbelievable. Hold on. We good now? I swear to God, I'm never gonna get it figured out. So there's two settings. I think I've said this before. There's two settings, and they're identical. They're identical. But if you click the one setting, it doesn't work. And if you click the other, it does work. But they're the exact same. Whatever. You guys don't care. I don't care. Mike's back on. Glad to be with you here on a Monday night. It is the Smoke Break, powered by BetUS on the Buffalo Fanatics YouTube channel. And it is the week of the Super Bowl. But we have a lot more going on outside of the big game. Two big-time household names on the trade block this Monday afternoon. One of which has piqued my interest sizably, as it has all of Bill's Mafia. Another one that's interesting. I don't know if it's... I know it's not nearly as interesting as the other. But still a household name, a terrific player that unfortunately had showed his age this past year. One team wants to move off from one guy. One guy wants to move off from their team. We'll talk about Myles Garrett requesting a trade from the Cleveland Browns tonight. We'll also talk about the LA Rams informing Cooper Kupp that they will be shopping him this offseason, working with him to try and find him a suitable home. Man, it's crazy. I know we talked about this last night, and we will, by the way. That'll be part of this show tonight. We are going to go back, as promised. Tons of comments from the show yesterday talking about what I coined to be the NFL's perception problem. We have a ton of comments on that. I asked you guys to leave your comments, your thoughts, your opinions on the current state of the NFL, your big takeaway from the reaction to the AFC Championship and how many are blaming the referees, how the fix was in. It's been a huge topic of conversation really throughout the year. Honestly, throughout the reign of the Kansas City Chiefs here, for the most part. But really, in more ways than ever before, it seems like throughout the year here. And this past week at a seismic level. We talked about that last night. We're going to read your comments this evening, dive back into that topic later on in the show. There's well over 90 comments on that video and counting. So we'll dive into all of them, get your guys' thoughts, because that's why I wanted to bring it up. I mean, you might think one way, and then you might think that, you know, like for me, from my perspective, I don't think it's rigged, you know, but I think that there are elements of the game right now and the way it's being perceived that are ruining the way we all used to enjoy the game. However, there's other people on the other end that totally think the fix is in. You go read the comments, and it's one side or the other. And that's why I wanted to have the topic brought up and have a conversation about it, because believe it or not, it is very split down the middle in terms of how people are feeling about this. And my whole takeaway is, if you feel so strongly on one end, especially the negative end, yet you're consuming NFL content, you're watching my show, you're in tuned enough to know about it, that means you're a fan, and it's affecting the way you're viewing the game. So we'll talk about that later on in the show. But for now, let's dive into the big news. And that is today, Myles Garrett requesting out of Cleveland. And then more recently here, a couple of hours ago, the LA Rams informing Cooper Kupp that he will be moved on from this offseason. Before we dive into it, real quick, over on BetUS, as mentioned, of course, as you know by now, we are less than a week away from the Super Bowl. And the odds are up right now on BetUS. The Chiefs are still a 1-point favorite, looking for the three-peat. 1-point favorite over the Philadelphia Eagles. Over-under of 49. Team totals are at 24.5. You can get in on the game over on BetUS using the promo code YouTube150. That'll get you a 150% sign-up bonus, up to $2,000 on your first deposit, 125% bonus on your next two after that. I can't lie to you, and I said this to my buddies the other day. And I honest to God, like right hand to God, no word of a lie, it's got nothing to do with the Bills' sour grapes and them not being in it. Has there ever been a less hyped Super Bowl? The media cycle the last 48 hours has been dominated by Myles Garrett, more recently now Cooper Kupp, and Luka Doncic and Anthony Davis. If you were to just go on Twitter, and as you guys are well aware of, your Twitter algorithm is predicated based on your interests. So you guys are all obviously sports fans. So your Twitter feed, much like mine, is usually 70% sports. With that in mind, if you go on Twitter right now, if you just got dropped into this week, say you just got, you're a big sports fan, you woke up from hibernation, you get dropped into this week, and you hop on your Twitter feed, you would have no idea the Super Bowl was this week. You'd have no clue. All you'd see is every team and their mother, which I'm about to do, pleading for Myles Garrett to join their team. You'd see, Cooper Kupp, who was once, offensive player of the year type player, MVP in the Super Bowl type player. People hoping they might be able to get that out of him again, 1 or 2 more years for their squad. And then, of course, maybe the most insane trade in NBA history, on a short list of one of the more insane trades in sports history. The Dallas Mavericks trading Luka Doncic to the Lakers. That was like, even for me, like I told you on last night's show, I like the NBA. I really get into it around this time. Once the Super Bowl is over, that's when I really start getting into it. So I'm not a diehard. That's like pretty much the definition of a casual. But around this time of year when there's no football, I enjoy it. When the playoffs start to kick off and then you get the March Madness going, I get into basketball. But I'm not a diehard. That's the point. But even in that moment, that was one of those where were you moments. Where were you when Luka Doncic got traded to the Lakers? And I tried to think of an NBA or an NFL equivalent to it, and I really couldn't. For those of you who are not that big into the NBA, it is, even if you're a casual into the NBA or whatever like me, like it is insane how massive that trade was. You're talking about a guy in Luka who's younger than I am, and he's already a 5-time first-team NBA player. He was the conference finals MVP last year. He's already got a offense. He's got a ton of accolades under his belt. He's already one of the best Mavericks to ever pick up a ball. And now, overnight on Saturday, for seemingly no reason other than, from what I can discern, him being maybe slightly overweight and lazy, even though he's still unarguably a top 3 player in the NBA, maybe number 1, because he's, I guess, a little bit overweight and lazy. He's a Laker today. And the reason I bring this up is because that has been what everyone's been talking about. You really would have no idea right now that you are 6 days removed from the Super Bowl. And I don't know if it's, I mean, I think it's got a lot to do with the Chiefs fatigue. I think if we had, and this is no bias, I'm telling you, but I think if it was Bills Philly, if it was Bills Commanders, honestly, if it was Ravens Philly or swap Philly out, if it was Detroit, Baltimore or Buffalo or whoever, I think there'd be a lot more buzz. We had this matchup a couple of years ago. We've had the Chiefs in the Super Bowl now, 5 out of the last 6? So I think it's genuinely getting to a point now where people are just kind of like, meh. And that's just, I don't think there's ever been more of a testament to how great the Kansas City Chiefs are than that. I mean, you imagine being so good that people are just getting sick and tired of it, because that's essentially where we're all at right now. But that's the reality. Anyway, so it is Super Bowl week, but this has been the dominant NFL headline today. And we'll start with Myles Garrett being the main topic of conversation here. Myles Garrett, unquestionably one of, if not the best defensive player in the NFL, has requested a trade from the Cleveland Browns. First things first here, I'm seeing from a lot of Browns fans a state of shock. They're in a state of shock over this. I feel for my man Zay, Chef Zay, AFC North Roundtable on Wednesday nights. Diehard Browns fan, does a great job covering them. I don't know how he does it. I don't know how Browns fans do it. I mean, to some degree, I remember what it was like to be not that it was ancient history. I mean, it was only whatever it was, 8-9 years ago, where the Bills were at that, peak of mediocrity. The Bills were never the Browns. I mean, they were at points in time, there was flashes of dysfunction similar to the Browns. They were never the Browns. It's really hard to be the Browns. The Jets are doing an awfully good job of trying to become the Browns. But the Browns, as the old saying goes, the Browns is the Browns. I mean, the Browns are the Browns. The Browns have been the Browns my whole life. And it's insane to think that at one point in time, for the majority of my life, the Bills were closer to the Browns than they are the Chiefs and the Ravens and in the upper echelons of the league. But that was the truth. But it's crazy how, as the Bills sort of migrated away from the dysfunction, teams that have always been kind of hovering around dysfunction or were fully integrated within dysfunction continued to get more dysfunctional. It was right, and you can pretty much dial it back to the 2018 draft. I mean, when you think of dysfunction right now in the NFL, you cannot go a full 10 seconds without mentioning the Browns or the Jets. You'll bring up the Panthers right now. You'll bring up, of course, the Giants. But when it comes down to it, if you were on a game show, say you were on Family Feud, you know how on Family Feud, there's like 5 categories and it's all based on the survey, and they take the top answers from the survey, and then that's what winds up creating the list. If the survey was top 5 most dysfunctional teams in the NFL, it would almost unquestionably be Browns 1, Jets 2, or some iteration of that. There's no way the Browns and the Jets are not on that top 5. So the whole point is, in the 2018 draft, the Bills were hovering around the same exact point that the Jets and the Browns were. That's why they all were picking in the top 10, and they were all getting set to draft a franchise quarterback. And for once in my life, things actually went right for the Bills and didn't go right for the other teams. It's always felt like throughout my life, everybody else in my sports fandom, everybody else catches the break except for the Bills. The Bills caught the break in 2018. And in that draft, the Browns take Baker Mayfield and the Jets take Sam Darnold. And obviously both guys, happy for them, have had resurgence in their career, especially this past year. But they've been on how many different teams now? This is what? 3rd or 4th team each for them? Meanwhile, Josh Allen is in the argument for top 2, top 3 quarterback any given Sunday ever since he's been drafted, for the most part. And this is why I was sort of shocked at seeing this, the shock of the Browns fans when Myles Garrett announces that he wants out. Now, I understand that there was a moment in time early in this postseason into the offseason here where it looked like, Myles Garrett was going to be collaborating with the front office, looking to find a way to make it better. Look at you know how it is as a fan. When you are a diehard fan, this is why, man, I can't lie to you, man. There isn't a fan base that I feel worse for than Cleveland Browns fans. I don't know what else to say. I genuinely, like, it almost makes me, like, it genuinely makes me sad. Because it's not like the Jets where you play them twice a year and it's just like, from our perspective, it's like, screw the Jets. You went out and got Aaron Rodgers. You have a halfway decent roster. You've just found every way possible to blow it up. Plus, they're a division rival. So you're never going to catch me sitting here feeling bad for the Jets. But, the Bills and the Browns, like I mentioned earlier, they were always kind of like, it always felt like they were kind of stepbrothers a little bit, the Lake Erie connection. And it's just the fan base is extremely passionate, and they have just suffered tremendously. Tremendously. I mean, at least if it all ends today, say Josh Allen pulls an Andrew Luck on us tomorrow. I mean, at least we got to experience this for some time here. Through my lifetime, it has only gotten considerably worse for Cleveland. Like, just each and every year. Yeah, you've had your flashes in the pan of a wild card appearance, right? Baker Mayfield gets that win over Big Ben, who had half of his body out the door to retirement. Joe Flacco gets absolutely rolled by the Houston Texans a season ago. I mean, that's basically what you have to show for my entire lifetime's worth of Cleveland Browns football. And you go back to 2018, it's kind of where it all comes back to, where the Jets and the Browns have been trying to grasp at straws to save themselves from drowning. Meanwhile, the Bills have been, obviously they haven't won a Super Bowl, and that's really all that matters in anybody's eyes. But when you're comparing it to the Jets or the Browns, the Bills have been chilling on a yacht compared to those two teams trying to find some way to keep their head above water. And Myles Garrett, for that Cleveland Browns team, I mean, he is their Josh Allen. Unquestionably. It's kind of going back to what Saquon Barkley was, to, I think, a lesser degree, but I think to some degree, the comparison is there. You're on a very dysfunctional team, a team that really doesn't seem to have much of a future, a team that you really don't know what the answer is. I mean, you just have no clue where this is going to go. And if you have the crystal ball that you can kind of conjure up in your mind and you take a look at what you think's going to happen, it's really hard to conjure up anything positive. You're stuck with that Deshaun Watson contract, which I've said 1,000 times is going to go down as the worst contract in the history of professional sports. I don't even think it's going to be comparable. I mean, it is going to take something so catastrophic, so horrid, and so headline like busting. Like it's going to have all of the elements that the Deshaun Watson deal had, but it's going to have to be twice as worse in order for this move that they made on Deshaun Watson to ever get trumped as being, in my opinion, just unarguably the worst move of all time. And you're looking from Myles Garrett's perspective, and he's the Josh Allen, right? So imagine if Josh Allen's imagine Josh Allen on the Bills. And I know it's different. You got the quarterback and you got the defensive player. But imagine you're looking at the team and you're like, I just don't see any future here at all. I don't see how we're going to win anytime soon. I don't see how we're ever going to compete. My prime years, as it stands right now, are going to be wasted going 7-10, right? 8-9, maybe a wild card at best if we back into it. The way the division stands right now, I mean, there's no way we're outpacing the Bengals, the Ravens, the Steelers. We're not close. I mean, yeah, maybe we steal a win or two over them every year like they did this past year. Yeah, I mean, that's how the division battles go. But what does that really mean in the grand scheme of things? Nothing. And I'm seeing a bunch of Browns fans saying that this was like the worst day that they've had as a fan in a long time. And they're stunned by it. And I kind of had two emotions when I saw this. One, I was kind of, like I said, I was kind of confused by the shock. How could you not see this coming? I know that Myles Garrett, like I said earlier, he sort of made an effort to seem like he was collaborating with the front office on how they were going to turn this franchise around, make it competitive. But how the hell is Myles Garrett in control of any of that? What's he supposed to do? He's given them the best years of his career. I mean, Myles Garrett has been nothing but one of the best players on the football field every given week for that team, and they got absolutely nothing to show for it. I mean, the guy wins a Defensive Player of the Year a couple of years ago. I mean, what does he have to show for it as far as a team success is concerned? That's a guy who's an alternate competitor. I mean, you look at that guy. That guy looks like he was genuinely made in a lab. Like, I know we say that all the time about Josh Allen and stuff. No. Myles Garrett looks like a guy that was made for a science project. If you could come up with the most intimidating, most dominant looking athlete on the planet and then present that for your science project, it would be Myles Garrett. The guy is, I've never seen anything like the guy. Every time I see him, or like when this stuff happens, I can't help but go back to the video I saw. I'll never forget it, where he's playing pickup basketball at the Y. And the guy just looks like nothing I've ever seen in my life. Nothing I've ever seen in my life. The guy's biceps are the size of my entire torso. One of the most dominant defensive presences we've ever seen. And the guy has given the best years of that career up until this point to an organization that has done nothing but continuously put themselves deeper and deeper and deeper into a black hole. And he's looking at it, and he's saying, you know what, enough's enough here. He's got to be looking at it like we're all looking at it. We're tied to what? A $350 million guaranteed contract to Deshaun Watson, who, by the way, even if they wanted him to play next year, probably can't because he got a season-ending injury again, then re-aggravated it. The guy hasn't played meaningful football through a full duration of a season in how long now? 3-4 years? I don't even know. The guy, Deshaun Watson, has become completely irrelevant. He's become completely irrelevant. And the idea that Deshaun Watson is ever going to be some saving grace for Cleveland, or he's ever going to be a top 10 quarterback again, is asinine. It's completely out of the question. But you're still tied to the amount of money put on the table for a guy that was supposed to be that for you. And offensively, of course, Nick Chubb, the season-ending injury last year, and now we know how that turned out. He went from being one of the best running backs in the league to now that's irrelevant. Where is it heading? Numerous firings throughout his tenure as a Cleveland Brown at the head coaching position. I mean, it's a mess. And he's looking at it, and he's thinking what we're all thinking. This is going nowhere good anytime soon. I'm one of the best players on the planet. I got to go and get myself an opportunity to make something of my career from the team perspective. Do I want to be remembered as the Defensive Player of the Year freak show, dominant defensive end that was wasted away in Cleveland? Or do I want to go and say, you know what, enough's enough. I want to go and get a crack at it with one of these contenders? I mean, I know the decision I would make. That's why I'm stunned by the idea that Browns fans were stunned by this. But then the other emotion I had was this had to have been the final straw for Cleveland Browns fans. And this is why I think they're shocked. It's not that they're necessarily shocked, but I think that this was the straw that broke the camel's back. And I think that shock can oftentimes be conflated with reality just setting in. It's not necessarily you weren't expecting it, but you really weren't ready to deal with it. And I think that that's kind of what's going on here in Cleveland. Because ever since that Deshaun Watson contract got inked, I mean, they essentially signed off on their own death certificate. I mean, I don't know. Ask yourself. I'm thinking to myself right now, I'm going to be 28 next month. And I'm genuinely trying to think what age I will be when the Cleveland Browns get back to any sort of prominent competitive level. And when I say competitive level, I mean divisional round, like a team that you're threatened by on a week in, week out basis. I'm not saying that they're not a team. I got a lot of respect for the Browns in the sense that they're always one of those teams that can show up and randomly beat Baltimore or randomly beat Pittsburgh. But when I'm talking about the idea of when the Cleveland Browns will become a Baltimore or a Buffalo or shades of KC, no one's going to become KC, but like we look at Buffalo and Baltimore right now, where they have shades of KC and you're waiting for them to get over that hump. Think about it in your mind. Does it even seem like a remote possibility anytime in the near future? Anytime? I mean, like Signified saying, early 30s if you're lucky. And that's what, a half a decade? If you're lucky. I personally think longer. Because it's all predicated on finding the quarterback. And as of right now, even if you were to magically find another one to replace the god-awful contract with Deshaun Watson next year, which they're not going to do, it still would take a couple of years to build around him. I mean, it's a mess. It's a mess. But Myles Garrett's he's that dude, right? And he's looking at it and he's thinking, I got to go and be a part of something that's going to allow me to put my full legacy together as one of the defensive greats in this game. And this is where I feel bad for Cleveland Browns fans. Because after all that you've endured, it feels like Myles Garrett's like your Captain America. He's kind of like your saving grace on the team. He's the one guy you can cling to. And this is why I kind of made the comparison with the Giants and Saquon Barkley. Where it's like with Saquon, they had nothing. The Giants had nothing. They really still have nothing. They got, Malik Neighbors is going to be a star, I think. And we'll see what they do at the quarterback position. They're given the Shane and Dable experiment another go, but it doesn't seem anywhere close in New York. And the only thing that they really had to cling to was the superstardom of Saquon Barkley. And that's why I had thought that the move was so bad, not just because you set him to a division rival, not just because you're watching him put up historic numbers right now, having an MVP year, about to play in a Super Bowl, not because you're letting one of the greats go, but really because you're letting the entire identity of your team go. You're letting the entire identity of that team walk out the door. You're letting the only guy selling jerseys, the only guy putting fans in the stands, selling tickets, you're letting that guy walk. And with the NFL, it's so much more than just the X's and O's and winning football games. It's a business as well. And you're letting your biggest business asset walk out the door in addition to your biggest X's and O's asset. And this is very, very similar in Cleveland. Right now, Myles Garrett is the most popular player on the Browns, the best player on the Browns, the identity of the Browns. And really, as it stands right now, you would think he's the future of the Browns in terms of, hey, we have one of the best defensive players in the league. Can we find a way to make it work around him? But man, it gets to a point from the personal level when you just can't sit around and wait for somebody else to do what you're hoping to go and do yourself. I mean, you can't. And I think for Browns fans today, it was a sad realization that the idea that Myles Garrett was going to be able to somehow lead the resurgence of the Cleveland Browns into the next chapter is not going to happen. Now, Cleveland can come out and say all they want that we're not willing to deal them and we're this and that, but we know how this all goes. Well, once you make a statement like Myles Garrett did, and believe me, this has had to have been in the works for a while. He's probably felt this way for a while here. You're watching what the Bills are doing. You're watching what Baltimore's doing, obviously what KC's doing. And you're also watching within your division. I know Cincinnati had a down year, but they just played in a Super Bowl a couple of years ago. I know Pittsburgh, they are what they are. They're an easy out in January, but hell, that's still a guaranteed playoff team every year for the most part. He's just looking up at everything. And there really doesn't seem to be any light at the end of the tunnel. And I got to imagine that he's probably been feeling like this for a while. When you've been in Cleveland and know what the result of the season's more than likely going to be each and every year, this has to build up over time. And I kind of got the vibe. This is why I was kind of stunned that Browns fans were shocked by this. I don't know how they didn't see it coming. When I watched the Hard Knocks, when I watched the AFC North Hard Knocks, it just seemed like he was at peace when the season ended. Like he kept saying he had that press conference where he had mentioned that he wants to, compete for championships and stuff. It just seemed like the writing was on the wall. And that writing came out today full-fledged. Now the question is, who's going to land him? And this is where we pivot to the Buffalo Bills side of things here, of course. This is, this is Brandon Beane. This is Brandon Beane's dream here. This is Brandon Beane's dream scenario here. Ever since Brandon Beane has taken over as GM of the Buffalo Bills, he has pretty much made it his mission to find a dominant pass rusher. There has been no other positional group that he has tried to target in more on landing than that positional group. And unfortunately for us fans, it just hasn't happened. They've really given it a hell of a go. You cannot say that they haven't put their best foot forward in terms of trying to do it, right? The amount of assets that they have invested in trying to find a Myles Garrett, or even somewhat close to an equivalent of a Myles Garrett, it's basically what he's done ever since he's taken over as the GM. Think about all of the guys that have come through. And think about all the guys currently that they have on the younger end of things. Greg Rousseau, Ed Oliver, AJ Epinesa. The amount of guys that have come through, whether it be draft, whether it be a massive trade like Von Miller, it has seemingly been the ultimate goal of Brandon Beane to find the Josh Allen equivalent of the defensive side of the ball for this team. And they just haven't been able to do it. They've put together solid pieces. There's no doubt about it. And they've nailed a couple of real hidden gems on the defensive side of things. No question about it. But that's primarily been in the secondary and in the intermediate aspect of the defense. They have yet to hit a home run on the defensive line. Now, you could argue, they've hit a couple of doubles. Maybe you want to argue a triple. What we got out of the guys that they've taken thus far, the production's there. It's just not to the level in which you would hope it would be or what they were looking for. Greg Rousseau was drafted to be Myles Garrett. He's just not that. Ed Oliver has been great, but there's a difference between TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, and then the tier or two below. And obviously they don't grow on trees. I believe Brandon Beane's even the one who's said that in the past. These guys don't come around very often. And when they do, it's very rare that they're let go. And this is why this is now Brandon Beane's dream. And this is one of those rare scenarios. Oftentimes when you hear a wide receiver's name get thrown out there, like Cooper Kupp here, for instance, oftentimes when you hear a wide receiver name get thrown out, or, one of those sexy household names or whatever, cornerback, what have you, everybody always thinks, oh, Bills. Brandon Beane, he's intelligent with how he spends his money. He's frugal to a noticeable extent. He's not very frivolous when it comes to throwing money around. And the only real time we've seen him do it to an extent that I was somewhat shocked by was the Von Miller move. And it really hasn't worked out at all. It's not close to what anybody would have hoped for in terms of the investment and return. But what's the link here? The link here is the one move that felt like it was outside of the conservative. I don't want to say conservative, but the one move that felt like it was, hey, let's really put our chips in the middle of the table here, was for an edge rusher, was for Von Miller. And the way it sits right now, this iteration of Myles Garrett currently is infinitely better than what Von Miller was when the Bills traded for him a couple of years ago. Now, it's going to cost a lot more, I would imagine. The trade assets involved are going to be substantial. But here's the thing. Brandon Beane's been trying to find his Myles Garrett really throughout his entire tenure with Buffalo. Well, here it is. And in my opinion, what does it matter the draft capital that you currently have that you're going to throw away as a lottery ticket and hope to land your Myles Garrett when you could just put those in the middle of the table and get the guy you've been looking for? And this is where I think it's one of those rare moments where I could see them overpaying. I wouldn't mind them overpaying. I don't think anybody would mind them overpaying, really. This is one of those rare scenarios where I just think that the overpaying element of things isn't really a primary concern for most people. You know, like this past season, when Stephon Diggs is gone and Gabe Davis is gone, and we had the conversation about what the hell we're going to do at wide receiver. You know, looking back on it in hindsight, it was awfully intelligent, not just dumping money or draft capital trying to find the next Diggs because they realized they didn't need it. But the Bills have allowed 33 points per game against the Chiefs in the playoffs. 4 losses to the Chiefs, 33 points per game in those losses. The reason they went and got Von Miller in the first place was to try and do what they've yet to be able to do since acquiring him. Beat the Chiefs. Find a guy on defense that can be the difference maker on defense like Josh Allen is on offense, and then somehow combine that together to finally beat the Chiefs and then finally make it back to the Super Bowl. But Von Miller hasn't been that. And the current roster, the way it's set up, does not have that either. Here's a defensive player of the year, unarguably one of the best defensive players in the league, requesting a trade, wanting to play for a championship contender. Now, it's not going to be easy. I'd argue 31 teams pick up the phone and inquire on what it's going to take. I mean, I don't know how you couldn't. I think it would be negligence as a general manager to not at least pick the phone up and see what Cleveland's looking for. Even if you're in cap hell, or even if you have nobody worth a damn to put on the block to trade for Myles Garrett, you're picking up the phone. Because who knows? You know, the other night, Mavericks pick up the phone, and all of a sudden, you know, out of nowhere at midnight on Saturday, Luka Doncic is a Laker. I mean, you really never know. The next time you think that a trade can't happen, in fact, my buddy sent me this earlier. If you put through the same trade that the Lakers and the Mavericks just conducted on Saturday night, if you put through that same trade on NBA 2K, it doesn't go through. The computer doesn't let it go through. It says it's not a fair trade. The computer denies it. You know how if you play sports video games, Dynasty or whatever, and you make a trade, the computer has a system set up to determine whether or not a trade is fair or not, allow it to go through so it can have some sort of realism to it. You cannot make that trade that just happened on Saturday night in the game. So next time you think something can't happen, I mean, it totally can happen. It totally can happen. And once again, the reason why I see this being a possibility, because you know how it goes. We do this with everybody, and I do it too. I love it. Every single time a name of prominence in the NFL requests a trade or the team says they're going to release him or whatever, I do the same thing every time. I post a picture. I caption. I did it with this. I caption, you know, Schefter breaking the news or ESPN breaking the news. I just caption it with a picture of Brandon Beane making a phone call. Because you always want to think that when these guys of this caliber are available, you always want to think of the idea of them coming to your team. I mean, let's be honest. The season just ended for the Bills a little over a week ago. And now, look, we're already back to smiling a little bit over the maybe non-existent idea that Myles Garrett could potentially be a Bill. This is the beauty of the NFL. This has always been the beauty of the NFL. It's hope. Because if hope didn't exist, I wouldn't be on here talking to you. you wouldn't be on the other end listening, because if we didn't have hope, we wouldn't be Buffalo Bills fans. Let's face it. That's the reality here. It's hope that keeps the train moving. And a week removed after a gut-wrenching loss in the AFC Championship, you're now filling up the tank again with a little bit more hope that, hey, maybe Bean pulls off something crazy here. We go into 2025, 17 at quarterback, and Myles Garrett quarterback in the defensive side of things. And even though in your mind, even though probably not going to happen, right? The idea of it happening is what's keeping a smile on your face. It's what's helping you sleep at night, getting over the loss from last week. If hope did not exist, we wouldn't be Buffalo Bills fans. And this is what I love about this league. The Super Bowl hasn't even happened yet, and on Monday of this week, we have two major household names being put up on the trade block, and it's all we're talking about. And it's filling up 30 fan bases, tanks of hope. And I'm reading some comments here, I don't know if we're smiling yet. We're not. Ariel is saying, I don't know if we're smiling yet. We're not. We're not smiling yet, but we're smiling at the possible idea, Bill Bond saying, Bills are $10 million over the cap. Good luck. You know how that goes. Couple of restructures here, a move here. This is what I was just referring to when it comes to that Luka Doncic and AD trade on Saturday night. If you want to make it happen, you can make it happen. I mean, look what Philly's done with their roster. And ironically enough, Philly's one of the leading teams in the betting market to land Myles Garrett. I don't know. It often feels like Howie Roseman's he's using a different checkbook than everybody else in the league. I don't understand how he does it. I don't quite get it. I mean, go and look at, and this is why if Kansas City wins on Sunday, man, the hate has. I shouldn't say that because you know where I'm at with it, but the respect has got to be given. That Philadelphia Eagles team, on paper, is twice as good as Kansas City. Go look at that Eagles roster. The Eagles, from positional group to positional group, I mean, you could argue it's better than Kansas City in almost every way except for the quarterback position. But we all know it doesn't matter. And if Kansas City beats them on Sunday, it's just once again, it's like, I don't, you throw your hands up in the air. This is why I often say that everybody thinks the Chiefs or the Chiefs are the Bills' problem. No, the Chiefs are the league's problem. They're everybody's problem. Because you can have a team like the Philadelphia Eagles and still be an underdog going into the Super Bowl on Sunday. No reasonable NFL fan looks at those two rosters, the Eagles and the Chiefs. And if you're playing backyard football and you're just picking guys in the schoolyard, back in the day, you have two team captains and you pick your teams at recess. Nobody in their right mind is picking the Chiefs full roster over the Eagles, but it doesn't matter. Right? The point I'm making here is that you can load up with guys. You can find ways to do it. And I think the Bills could find a way to do it. And the reason why I think the Bills could find a way to do it here with Myles Garrett as opposed to maybe somebody else, whether it be on the offensive side of things or on the back end of the defense, this has been Brandon Beane's mission. I mean, this has been like it's kind of like his own version of Lord of the Rings. I mean, in an essence, like this has been his journey to find the ultimate pass rusher. Think about how many shots at the wall he's taken, how many darts he's thrown, trying to find that bullseye. And it just feels like if there's one positional group that he's willing to go above and beyond for, we've seen him do it. We've seen him do it. And we've seen him do it for less. I think that even at the time, it was known that Von Miller wasn't what Myles Garrett is currently. I don't know what it would take. But I can't for the life of me imagine that it's not going to be heavily considered. And I can't imagine it's not going to be something that Brandon Beane mulls over and sees what he can do. A first-round pick's inevitable, and then you get into the discussion of the players and what you do with that from there. I mean, inevitably, you're going to have to give up one of your interior defensive linemen, I would imagine, in addition to a first-round pick, and then whatever else. I don't know. I don't think it would take multiple first rounds. Maybe it would because of the Bills' draft position. The Bills' first-round draft picks just aren't all that valuable in comparison to what maybe other teams could give up, where they are on the totem pole, where they're drafting. But if the Browns have to make this move, if Myles Garrett backs them into a corner and they have to make this move and they're looking to restack the deck here, maybe you send him a Greg Rousseau and they take him up on the second contract and then they try to build from there. I mean, the Browns are in a rebuild. They've been in a rebuild forever. But the idea that the Cleveland Browns can currently build around Myles Garrett and create a winner within the time in which he's going to remain in his prime is just it's foolish. And he wants to go and play for a contender. That's the key. Myles Garrett, it doesn't seem like he really cares about the financial aspects of things right now, the location, right? He wants to go and play where he's got a crack at a title. So that already eliminates probably well over half the league. So now you kind of get down to, okay, well, who are those teams that are in that pool? And then what kind of makes sense? Well, you think about Detroit, and Detroit has a tremendous defense when healthy. And we forget that Aiden Hutchinson was out for the year. He's their Myles Garrett. He's their guy. So I don't know if that's necessarily a move that Detroit makes. Because when healthy, Detroit's got a good defense. And there's a reason why Aaron Glenn just got the Jets job. The one team that comes to mind to me that would make a lot of sense would be the Commanders, because you have your quarterback on a rookie deal. You just made the NFC Championship in your quarterback's rookie year. You're paying nobody, including the most expensive piece on the team. That, to me, would be a team that makes sense. However, does Myles Garrett look at the Commanders and think, is this going to be a consistent title contending team, or did the Commanders just have a hell of a year? I mean, we go back to what the Houston Texans were last year, where it felt like Houston was all of a sudden going to become a powerhouse because of how great CJ Stroud was in his rookie year. Then they dominated the Browns in the postseason. They gave the Ravens a hell of a run in the first half. They took a step backwards this year. Do the Commanders take a step backwards? And does Myles Garrett want to risk his remaining prime years here contending for a championship with a team that hasn't proven year after year that they're title contenders? They proved it last year. But as we know, I mean, there's teams every year that kind of seem like they're going to be something that it doesn't wind up being what you thought. I mean, the Houston Texans were a perfect example from last year to this year. I mean, it's not all that long ago that the Jacksonville Jaguars were in an AFC championship with a lead over Tom Brady and the New England Patriots. But there's teams in this league that have consistently proven time and time again. So that's why when you think about a team like the Chiefs, I mean, I don't know. How bad does Myles Garrett want to win a championship? I don't know if it's possible for the Chiefs. And obviously they have Chris Jones and Karlaftis and McDuffie and just an incredible defense. And of course, Spags leading the way. I don't know. There's a possibility. And could you imagine the Kansas City Chiefs? Could you imagine? I mean, if the Kansas City Chiefs landed Myles Garrett, I mean, what the hell? What do you even do at that point? What do you do? And that's the whole other reason why one of these other teams has got to step up to the plate prior to that even becoming a possibility. That's why you have to overspend. You'd almost have to have one of these teams. I don't care if the Chiefs were offering up the next 10 years of the franchise for Myles Garrett. One of these teams, whether it's Baltimore, Buffalo, Cincinnati, Philadelphia, Detroit, Washington, I don't know. I could care less. One of these teams one of these teams would have to outbid Kansas City just for the sake of outbidding Kansas City. Somebody would have to. It's kind of like, The Dark Knight Rises. They expect one of us in the wreckage, brother. One of these teams has to be in the wreckage. And it cannot be Kansas City. One of these teams is going to have to fall on the sword so Kansas City doesn't land Myles Garrett. And boy, oh boy, do I hope it's the Buffalo Bills that land on it. Boy, oh boy, do I. But when you consider the teams that are in that pool of contention, I'm seeing my main man Jesse coming in here. He's saying we got some talking to do tomorrow. I know he wouldn't mind his 49ers going and picking up Myles Garrett. And we know the Niners had a down year this past year, but who's been more in title contention over the last 2 decades than, or the last decade and a half really, than San Francisco? I would say right now, in terms of dialing in on what Myles Garrett wants, there's probably a pool of what? What do you guys think? 12 teams? Maybe? But if he really wants to compete, for a championship, and that's what it seems to be, that seems to be the ultimate motive here, which I love this about guys, by the way. I love guys. They know that they've made their money, right? And they want their legacy to go beyond their personal impact and their personal accolades. I love this. So, but at the end of the day as well, though, it's got to make sense for Cleveland as well. It's not like Myles Garrett's going to be able to sit back and pick his team. I doubt that's the case. I mean, they're going to deal him to whoever gives him the best offer. It's not like Myles Garrett's sitting back here on the couch flicking through game film and saying, hey, I'll take that one. It's got to make sense for Cleveland. And that's what makes you wonder if he goes to the NFC, because does Cleveland want to ship Myles Garrett to any of these teams in the AFC? That's what makes it a little bit more difficult for Buffalo, for Baltimore. I mean, here's the other thing, too. And once again, you can't rule anything out, because the Giants literally just gave Saquon Barkley to the Eagles. He had one of the best seasons we've seen as a running back since Adrian Peterson. And that was an interdivision move. But I, for the life of me, cannot imagine. The AFC North is one of the most contentious divisions in the sport. I mean, it's one of the most bitter, rival-oriented divisions in the sport. Very hard to imagine a deal gets made with Baltimore or Cincinnati. But like I just said, nobody would have ever thought Saquon Barkley would be a Philadelphia Eagle. So we've seen crazier. It definitely could happen. But it makes you just wonder if the NFC side of things makes more sense for Cleveland. I'm reading into this a little bit more here. Sasa, who just brought this up? Listen, and I'll just say this right now. If and when he ever becomes a Buffalo Bill, I don't care if it's 3 a.m. Rico and it will be an emergency pod. Emergency Rico and bot. I don't care the day, time, whenever. That you can bet your life on. Mike the Buffalo 716 is saying, so he can pick the team based on his no trade clause. I haven't read into, so I appreciate you bringing this up, because I haven't read into the overall contract details surrounding Myles Garrett. Because ultimately, I was under the impression that it had to come down to the decision of the Cleveland Browns, because they don't want to move off of him, obviously. Now I'm reading here he doesn't have a no trade clause. So this article right here, of note, he doesn't have a no trade clause. But given the Super Bowl aspirations laid out in the request, the list of acceptable destinations shrinks considerably. Yeah, so I don't think he gets to, he doesn't get to pick and choose where he goes. Jesse's coming in and helping me out. He doesn't have a no trade clause. However, if he won't report, it doesn't matter. See, and this is what it all comes down to. It's back to what we were just talking about with the cap room. Like these no trade clauses or the cap space for one team or whatever, there's always seemingly a workaround if one team wants to get it done with another team. There always seems to be a way to do it. And Jesse's saying he doesn't have a no trade clause. However, if he won't report, it doesn't matter. Both he and Cleveland have to find what works for both. Right. Because he's not just going to go anywhere like we've talked about here. He wants to go to a contender. So if Cleveland got a boatload of picks offered to him by, I don't know, Carolina or something, Myles Garrett's not going to want to do it. There's no incentive for him to do it. Might as well just stay in Cleveland. So it does, like I was just saying, the pool in which the pool that consists of the amount of teams that fit the criteria that Myles Garrett wants to be a part of is considerably small. So he technically, this is all right. So I'm reading one thing on this. You guys are saying another thing. So he doesn't have a no trade clause technically. Either way, though, you have to imagine he's only going to go somewhere that he finds is worth it, and Cleveland's only going to want to make that move if they find it's worth it for them. So either way, it just feels like it's going to be a small pool of teams that are going to be considered in the running for Myles Garrett. And the Bills are certainly at the top of that list, the way I see it. And once again, I come back to the idea of the positional of the position group at hand and the type of player we're talking about, and how Brandon Beane has been obsessed with the idea of trying to find that positional, or trying to find that position since he's taken over. Here it is. I mean, and ask yourself this. Is there a price in your head that's too much? So Rico's saying, what if we give the Browns Greg Rousseau this year's first, next year's second, and we get Myles in the Browns' fourth round? What do you guys think about that? You know, we see ideas like this flying all over the place. I guess the question is there a price too high in your opinion that you wouldn't be willing to go? You wouldn't be willing to give up? And in my mind right now, I just think where the Bills are currently at, how close that they've been, I don't really care what the price would be. You know what Myles Garrett is. Myles Garrett would instantly take this team to another level. Instantly. And that idea right there, I mean, I'm signing up for that. But does Cleveland want to sign up for that? Do they want the 30th overall pick? Do they think Greg Rousseau is one of those pieces that's worth combining with that pick to make that move? I don't know. What are other teams going to be offering? What is their priority? What's Cleveland's priority? I mean, are they looking to go defense? Are they looking to go offense? Because right now the Bills offensively, there's nothing. It would only be a defensive-oriented piece, and likely would have to be on the D line there in order to try to find a way to at least replace Myles Garrett in the meantime. The idea of it is spicy. It's amazing how how he releases the how these statements come out. As we switch gears to talking real quick about Cooper Kupp. So now the way that these things come out now, which I kind of like, it's from the player themselves as opposed to like somebody getting inside information and then leaking the idea that, oh, hey, Myles Garrett wants out, Cooper Kupp's leaving. You hear it right from the horse's mouth, so to speak. So this was the statement released by Myles Garrett, courtesy of Ian Rappaport's Twitter. And this is what Myles Garrett had to say this afternoon. As a kid dreaming of the NFL, all I focused on was the ultimate goal of winning a Super Bowl. And that goal fuels me today more than ever. My love for the community of Northeast Ohio and the incredible fan base of the Cleveland Browns has made this one of the toughest decisions of my life. These past 8 years have shaped me into the man that I am today. While I've loved calling this city my home, my desire to win and compete on the biggest stages won't allow me to be complacent. The goal was never to go from Cleveland to Canton. It has always been to compete for and win a Super Bowl. With that in mind, in bold font, by the way, with that in mind, I have requested to be traded from the Cleveland Browns. Man, I got to tell you, when you read that statement out loud and you think about that statement from the Browns fan perspective, I mean, no wonder I'm seeing some of these Browns fans say this is one of the darkest days that they've experienced as a fan. I mean, this portion right here is gutting if you're a Browns fan. Think about this portion of this statement. Step into a Browns fan's shoes right now as I read this from Myles Garrett. While I've loved calling this city my home, my desire to win and compete on the biggest stages won't allow me to be complacent. The goal was never to go from Cleveland to Canton. It has always been to compete for and win a Super Bowl. With that in mind, I have requested to be traded from the Cleveland Browns. That is essentially saying I'm never going to win in Cleveland. I'm never going to win in Cleveland. Cleveland's not winning anytime soon. And with that in mind, I want out because I want to win. That's what, is that not how you read it? And what I love about this is the guy's desire to want to win at the team level. I've never really seen it put like this. It's such a great way to put it. The goal was never to go from Cleveland to Canton. In other words, he's saying the goal was never to come in and be great as an individual. The goal was never to come in and just be great in terms of my own personal legacy. The goal was to come in and be part of something bigger than myself. And that is what the NFL is all about. That's what football is all about. That's why it's the ultimate team sport. And the way he puts that is almost chilling to a degree. It's like the goal was never to just have this be about me. And look at, we know all too well. In this league, not everybody thinks that way. There's a lot of me guys in this league. There's a lot of me guys. A lot of what am I getting paid, right? A lot of what are my stats looking like? Right now, Myles Garrett, he's all about what's my trophy case looking like at the end of this from the team that I wind up hanging the cleats up with. And from the Browns fan perspective, like you totally understand why they're sitting here saying this is a dark day. In fact, there were Browns fans outside of the stadium this afternoon, like picketing. Read that final caption. I mean, he's essentially telling you what was already on the wall, but you just probably wanted to deny it if you're a Browns fan. While I've loved calling this city my home, my desire is to win and compete on the biggest stages. And I won't allow myself to be complacent. He's essentially saying, if I stay in Cleveland, I'm never going to win. I'm going to be complacent in by nature, staying here. I'm never going to have the chance to achieve what I've always wanted to achieve. Man. And then in the all bold here, with that in mind, as if to say, hey, with the idea in mind that I want to win, I've requested a trade from the Cleveland Browns. With the idea in mind that I don't want to be complacent, with the idea in mind that I want to compete for a Super Bowl, and with the idea in mind that it's not about me, but it's about the team, I need to be out of Cleveland. Man, oh man. Let's talk about Cooper Kupp real quick. It was the opposite end of things for Cooper Kupp. So Myles Garrett let the world know that he wanted out of Cleveland. LA let the world know that they want Cooper Kupp out of LA. And he released his own statement. Cooper Kupp at 7:13 p.m. this evening, so about 3 hours ago. Cooper Kupp states, I was informed that the team will be seeking a trade immediately and will be working with me and my family to find the right place to continue competing for championships. I don't agree with the decision and always believed it was going to begin and end in LA. That's tough to swallow on the personal end. So with Myles Garrett, that's tough to swallow on the fan end because they're basically telling you, or he's basically telling you this team's not winning anytime soon. This is tough to swallow on Cooper Kupp's end because he knows that the Rams have been, one of the most competitive teams in the league since Sean McVay's taken over as the head coach, and they no longer want him. And he still wants to be there. It's just that they don't want him there. He goes on to say, still, if there's one thing that I have learned over the years, there are so many things that are out of your control, but it is how you respond to these things that you will look back on and remember. I have taken so much pride in playing alongside my teammates for the LA community. So thank you for embracing my family and making this such a special place for us. 2024 began with one of the best training camps of my career. Preparations start now for 2025. Highly motivated, as healthy as ever, and looking forward to playing elite football for years to come. Love you guys, but coming for it all. So Cooper Kupp will no longer be a LA Ram. Obviously, the primary focus for that offense right now is Puka Nacua, and that's obvious. He's been terrific. And just unfortunately for Cooper Kupp this past year, in addition to the injuries, he was not what he once was. We're talking about a guy here that was the offensive player of the year in 2021 and then parlayed that into a Super Bowl MVP. And it's just no longer there. It's not close. And we saw this last year. Now he still has those flashes, of course. The all-time greats, a guy, a player of caliber of Cooper Kupp, where you have the ability to win Offensive Player of the Year as a receiver and a Super Bowl MVP as a receiver, you're never going to completely fizzle out. But, his game from what it was 3 years ago, it's just not close. And when you factor in the amount of injuries that he sustained as well, it makes sense. There seems to be a young resurgence for LA. They've gone, towards the younger side of things, especially on the defensive side. You factor in Puka Nacua being their top guy on offense. You factor in Kyron Williams being the head of the backfield there. Outside of Matthew Stafford, it seems to be a young and upcoming LA Rams team. And obviously Cooper Kupp isn't going to be a part of that. I'm not in on the whole Cooper Kupp thing. I don't know. I'm just not. I don't know what Cooper Kupp. Look, if you can get him for next to nothing and you kind of acquire him the way the Bills acquired Amari Cooper, all right, fine. But I'm not sitting here pounding the table for Cooper Kupp. I don't really know who's going to be. There's a ton of free agents upcoming here at the wide receiver position. Obviously, T. Higgins is the crown jewel. Be very interesting to see if he stays in Cincinnati. I don't know if he's going to. Chris Godwin, of course. We'll see if the Bills retain Amari Cooper. The whole idea of the wide receiver thing to me now with the Bills, my mind is completely effed over it. I don't even know how to think about the position anymore. The Bills just averaged 30 points a game without a wide receiver really having a prominent game all year long. The Bills arguably put together the best offensive season in franchise history, and there really wasn't a receiver that had a dominant game, much less a dominant year. Outside of Khalil Shakir, I don't know. The Bills right now need a guy that takes them over the top offensively in terms of a wide receiver. They need they don't need the older guy that teams want to move off of. They need the guy that you're looking to build around. And I mean, obviously right now, if I'm looking at that free agency list, I would take either T. Higgins or Chris Godwin. Who wouldn't? But outside of that, there just isn't a whole lot of building around the wide receiver from the free agency list, nor is there guys like Cooper Kupp that you're looking to build around either. I don't know if they take another stab at it in the draft. I'm sure they will. I doubt they do it as high up as they did last year. I mean, when you factor in that they've been putting the chips in the middle of the table on offense as of late, James Cook, Dalton Kincaid, Keon Coleman, you saw once again that the defense in the postseason was arguably the bigger Achilles heel than anything that had to do with the offense. It feels like, I don't know how you guys feel. It's very early. Obviously, the Bills season just ended a week ago. It feels like if the Bills, as of right now, were to retain all their draft picks, and you just, in this hypothetical scenario where they don't make a trade or whatever prior to the draft, it does feel like this is a defense at the top of the draft type situation for the Bills coming up here. Then again, though, I don't know. When it comes to this wide receiver position, you guys let me know how you feel in the chat. This past year has really flipped my mind upside down in terms of how I view what this team needs at wide receiver moving forward. I can't not look at what they just did and think to myself, God, they need a Justin Jefferson. They need a Jamar Chase. I mean, we'd obviously love it. And do I think that would have been a difference maker in that Chiefs game? Potentially. But once again, the Chiefs had not allowed a team to score 30-plus points on them since 2022. And the Bills scored 30 against them in Week 11, and they scored 29 against them in the AFC Championship. In fact, it wasn't just 30-plus. I think it was 28-plus. The Chiefs had not allowed a team to score over 28 points on them since 2022. And if you remove the throwaway game against the Denver Broncos in Week 18, the Bills were the only team to do so, score more than 28 points on them. They were the only team to do so since 2022. They did it twice in the same year. So, yeah, we could sit here and say, one of those big name receivers might have been the difference. The Bills still put up more points on the Chiefs in both their attempts at them this year than anybody else has all season long, the last 3 seasons. So I don't know, man. I'm just torn. I mean, you obviously still don't know. You really still don't know what you have in Keon Coleman. He was injured, obviously, during the year. Brandon Beane said he had thought he didn't see the same player since the injury. I just don't even know what to make of it. There was no game where you looked at it and said, man, if we didn't have so-and-so at the wide receiver position, we're cooked today. It just never felt like that. It genuinely was everybody eats. And I know everybody's kind of sick and tired of talking about that. And I know a lot of people feel like the Bills needed that X factor in that Chiefs game. At the end of the day, they still scored 29 points. And I'm not sitting here telling you the Bills do not need more firepower at wide receiver. Of course they do. How they acquire that, I'm interested to see. I just don't think that Cooper Kupp is the answer. You already have Khalil Shakir, and it feels like Cooper Kupp is going to be bringing you a similar style of play to what Khalil Shakir is bringing you. Now, do they retain Amari Cooper? Curtis Samuel is starting to come out at the end of the year. Is there more tread on the tire there? What do they have in Keon Coleman? We have no idea. We really have no clue. One game seems to stand out to me with the Keon Coleman, and it was the Seahawks game. I mean, outside of that, this Bills team was putting up historic numbers for the franchise, and there wasn't a single wide receiver outside of Khalil Shakir that stood out. And even with Shakir, it wasn't like it was nothing crazy. I mean, it was a good season. I mean, what did Khalil Shakir finish with? He finished with 821 yards on 76 catches. Bills didn't have a 1,000-yard receiver this year. Scored 30 points a game. Had one of the best offenses in the league. One of the best offenses in franchise history. And they scored 28 plus in both attempts against the Chiefs. It's just that they allowed 32 points against the Chiefs. The only time all year long that they scored more than 30. It just feels once again like this upcoming draft, like I just mentioned, it's going to be going towards the defense. And this is where I come back to the idea of just putting all these picks on the table for a guy like Myles Garrett if it's possible. Because what the hell is the point of continuing to try to scratch off these lottery tickets if you got the winner on the table already? Put the assets in the middle of the table. If it can happen, make it happen. Now, whether or not it's tantalizing enough for Cleveland to make a move with Buffalo is one thing. But I don't sit here and look at it in terms of wanting to protect my assets and not go after Myles Garrett. Bankroll Spence, by the way, he's saying neither did the Chiefs. No 1,000-yard receiver. So, we go back to the idea of these top dogs, the idea that the quarterback needs them. Jamar Chase was the best receiver in the league this past year. They didn't make the playoffs. I know the offense was incredible, but it still came down to the defense. Justin Jefferson, first-round exit. You look at who's remaining right now. A.J. Brown, certainly a top receiver in this league. They don't utilize him like one, though. The Eagles are in the Super Bowl because of Saquon Barkley. A.J. Brown's a top 5 receiver in this league. You wouldn't know it this year. Barely utilize him. I don't think he's had a 100-yard game in a month and a half, 2 months. Quarterback, offensive line, ability to run the ball, and defense. Chiefs lost one legitimate game this year. And Travis Kelce was basically nowhere to be found for 90% of it. Xavier Worthy didn't seem to come on until the second half of the year. They were without Rashee Rice for the whole season. The Bills need more firepower on offense at the wide receiver position, no doubt about it. Cooper Kupp, to me, doesn't fit the billing when you factor in the age and the injury history. What does fit the billing, however, that remains to be seen. What they do this offseason to try and add that firepower, I do not know. But once again, my mind is fried over the idea of what it really matters. The Bills didn't lose to the Chiefs because of, in my opinion, the Bills didn't lose to the Chiefs because they didn't have Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, A.J. Brown, fill in the blank. Bills lost to the Chiefs because, once again, like every other time, a couple of plays here and, the defense allows 30-plus points. Like I mentioned, 4 games against the Chiefs in the playoffs, the Chiefs are averaging 33 points a game. That's a team that couldn't crack 30 all year long here. Speaking of those Chiefs, by the way, Super Bowl right around the corner. Over on BetUS, the Chiefs are favored over the Philadelphia Eagles. 1-point favorite right now on BetUS. Over-unders 49. Team totals at 24.5. Get in on the action before the lines move over on BetUS. Use the promo code YouTube150. That'll get you 150% sign-up bonus, up to $2,000 on your first deposit, 125% bonus on your next 2 after that. Let's take a peek at some of your super chats coming in here. Start at the top with my man Todd Tobin becoming a member. Shout out to you, Todd. We appreciate having you on board. Todd joining the Bing squad. I need Rico here to hit the bell. I know I told you I was going to get a bell, and I didn't get a bell because I was too focused in on the Bills and riding that high, and then, of course, crashing down to that low. We will get a bell on here eventually during the offseason for new members like Todd. But Todd, bing, or bow, 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 bow. So good to have you aboard. Appreciate you joining. And we look forward to having you in here throughout the offseason and moving forward. Signified coming in. And he's saying, if we don't walk away with Myles or Max Crosby, and man, either or. Oh, my God. I love Max Crosby. I mean, what do the Raiders have other than Max Crosby? I think Max Crosby would have to kind of force his way out. I don't know I don't know. What else right now does the Raiders have? Or what else do the Raiders have currently right now outside of Max Crosby? Then again, though, however, if they're smart, it's like, do we move on them to try and start this rebuild here? Tom Brady's a new minority owner here. We got Pete Carroll in here as his first year as the head coach for the team. Are we looking to go into a new direction? In order to go into that direction, do we have to move off of our best player? Kind of screw ourselves now in order to set ourselves up for the future. I freaking love Max Crosby. Oh my God. Either or. Oh, signified saying I'm done with this team if they don't walk away with Max Crosby or Myles Garrett. I refuse to watch them throw away the career of the best player we've ever had by taking no chances. And, this is what I was saying earlier. Brandon Beane has shown us that if he's willing to take a chance anywhere, it's at the defensive line position. If he is willing to take a chance anywhere, it is at an edge presence. He's done it multiple times throughout the draft, and the biggest swing he made in the offseason, really throughout his career here, was on Von Miller. So we know that if there's one area he's willing to do it in, it's this area. Do they have what it takes to get it done? Because I don't think the problem currently is his unwillingness to do it. I can't imagine Brandon Beane's not sitting at home right now with a whiteboard in front of him trying to figure out every possibility that he can get Myles Garrett in the building. Is it enough? Is it going to be able to outweigh what other teams are going to be able to offer? I don't think the question is whether or not they're willing to do it. I think the Bills are 1,000% willing to do it. Do they have what it takes to be able to do it? Spinotu coming in. He said he wanted to win a Super Bowl. So, KC, look at. Much like Signified just said, where he's willing to walk away from watching the Bills if they don't land Myles Garrett or Max Crosby. How could you not be willing to just want to walk away from it all if the Chiefs end up landing Myles Garrett? Could you imagine that? Chris Jones on one end, Myles Garrett on the other end, coached by Spags, with an all-pro and McDuffie in the backfield, plus you got Mahomes on the other side. I mean, good God. It can't happen. It cannot happen. It can't. It can't happen. If it happens, what do you even do? What do you even do? If that happens, I would have to have an emergency stream where I come on here and I just sit here like this the whole time. I just sit here like this, silent, and just shake my head. You just sit here in silence, and I just sit here for an hour straight and just. What else could you do? What could you say? There's nothing you could say. The crazy thing is, I don't see how it's out of the realm of possibilities for them. I mean, the Bills and the Chiefs are very comparable in the sense that it's like it seems like they both would have the ability to do it, even though they've both been so good. They both seem like they have the ability to make a move like that financially, should they really want to. I don't see how Casey's not out of the realm of possibilities. And when you factor in Myles Garrett, his resounding desire to want to go compete more than anything, that's the primary goal. You cannot roll out Kansas City. Josh Richardson coming in, member for 57 months. Let's go, Josh. He's saying, what up, Z-Bot? Myles Garrett is coming to the Bills. He has a no-trade clause in his contract. He controls where he's going. Dion Dawkins is recruiting him. But Dion better be. Everybody better be. I mean, they better roll out the red carpet. They better do anything. Literally anything. Who cares? Who cares? Like I said earlier, is there a cost too high? I don't know. I really don't think there is. Who do the Bills have that you consider to be completely untouchable outside of Josh Allen? Who's untouchable? Anybody? There's two guys that I wouldn't want to move off of outside of Josh Allen when we're considering Myles Garrett. I wouldn't want to move off of Spencer Brown or Dion Dawkins. But when you really think about the idea of Myles Garrett being on this team, then you think about who the Bills have. I mean, who's untouchable? I go back to, once again, what happened on Saturday night in the NBA. If you were to have created a list of guys that were untouchable in the league, Luka Doncic would have been either number one or number two. It would have been either Jokic at one, and then Doncic at two, maybe Jason Tatum up there. He's on the top five, and boom, gone. So crazier things have happened. But when you look at the Bills currently, I mean, who's untouchable that you would look at and say, man, outside of Josh Allen, I just don't know if I'd be willing to move on of it, off of him. And like I said, the offensive line is the best that they've had in a very, very, very long time. This offensive line, one of the most underrated in the league. And it's certainly the reason why Josh Allen has ascended to another level of his game. That's why I really would not want to move off of either Spencer Brown or Deion Dawkins. Outside of that, I mean, I don't know. I think anybody would be in play. Signified coming back in. Our wide receiver core is an overstated problem. It's not that bad. Defense is the problem. Go check the stats. We have the worst playoff defense of all time in our last 5 losses. I've been mentioning it all show. Yeah. 33 points per game. You're putting a bow on what I was saying, signified perfectly. This team had one of the best offenses in franchise history this year. This is why I have such a tough time wrapping my mind around the idea of, what this Bills team's going to do moving forward in terms of the wide receiver position. I just have no clue, because they just proved to you that they can put together an all-time season without having a receiver do much of anything. So I agree with you wholeheartedly, signified. It is an overstated problem. The Bills offensively in nearly every game this year did enough to win the football game. Just about every single game. That's why I feel like it's inevitable that defense is going to be the priority in this offseason. Now, do I think they make a move at the wide receiver position at some point in time? Absolutely. I don't know how they couldn't. Now, whether that's retaining Amari Cooper, whether that's trying to take a stab at one of these free agents, going back to the well in the draft, I don't know. Something's going to be done. But I agree with you. It is an overstated problem. The Bills just proved to you that they do not need that household name at receiver in order to have an exceptional offense. But they have kind of proven to you here that they really do need that next step on defense in order for them to take the next step. So whether they make a massive move for a guy like Myles Garrett is one thing. Whether they do that or not is one thing. I just think even if they don't, this upcoming draft, that feels like it's going to be the emphasis. Defense. Off-season year, defense. And you could argue a variety of different positional groups as well. I mean, you could argue the front line. You could argue the secondary. Offensively right now, I mean, outside of the wide receiver position, you have one of the best running back rooms in the league. You have one of the best offensive lines in the league. You have one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Yeah, you'd love to throw another piece or two at the wide receiver position, but man, once again, like what we just saw this past season is giving you every reason in the world to not be insanely concerned about the idea that they're not going to be able to compete unless they get this massive signing or massive draft landing at the wide receiver spot. That's why I'm much more honed in on trying to shore things up defensively moving into next year than anything else. All right. Hour 28 in the books. Let's shift gears to what we were talking about last night, and let's go take a peek at some of your comments from last night's episode. So last night we were talking about the impact that this past Bills game had on the overall discussion of kind of the way that the NFL is being perceived right now. Ever since the AFC Championship game concluded, there's been a massive discussion about, the influence that the refs had on the game, the idea that the NFL wants to see the Chiefs continue their prominence here, keep moving them down the line, so to speak, kind of putting the Chiefs on a conveyor belt and just keep moving them towards a championship. And I had said that I don't think that there is a script. I don't think that anybody's calling down to the refs saying, hey, screw the Bills on a spot here, or, give the Chiefs one of the, give them the benefit of the doubt on this call here over the Bills. I don't think that's happening. But the way that the NFL is being perceived right now, the majority of people that I'm seeing, they think that's happening. I mean, you have guys like Adam Schefter talking about the penalty situation with the Chiefs. Guys like Deshaun Jackson, I think I saw come out today talking about the idea that the Eagles have to play against the refs in this upcoming Super Bowl. It has become fact at this point. In fact, Roger Goodell was asked about it today at a press conference. Kind of, it's the media week here leading up to the Super Bowl. Roger Goodell was asked about it out in New Orleans. And it's all over social media, a bunch of articles on it. I'll pull up the one I'm seeing here from ESPN. And the title of it is Roger Goodell shuts down the notion the NFL officials are partial to the Chiefs. And this is written by Kalen Collar. And it starts out by saying NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell did his best to shut down the popular, and emphasis on popular, by the way, this is why we're talking about it, popular notion that NFL officials are partial towards the Kansas City Chiefs, calling it a ridiculous theory. Quote from Roger Goodell here on this topic. This sort of reminds me a little bit of the script, he said during his State of the League address Monday, that I write a script and I have a script for the entire season. I think it reflects a lot of fans' passion. And I think it also is a reminder for us how important officiating is. And I think the men and women that officiate the NFL are outstanding. They have the highest possible standards. He added, our officials are evaluated in several ways. It's not just the performance on the field, but it's things that go on in their own lives. And we have a very tight control over that. We monitor that very closely in a number of ways. It's funny. Ever since we last discussed this last night, there was something of prominence that happened in the MLB. Just this afternoon, an MLB umpire was fired over gambling violations. Pat Hoberg was fired as a MLB umpire due to allegations that he had a betting account that was shared with a professional poker player who also was betting on MLB games. He was fired for failing to, quote, uphold the integrity of the game. So right there, here's the idea that these guys are in on it. It's a story like that just goes to show you that they're not. Because the second that they find out that they are, it's a massive story. These guys get fired. You go back to the Tim Donaghy days of the NBA. It was a massive scandal. And his life was flipped on a dime, ruined over that. Now, he asked for it. He signed up for it. But the idea that there are guys willingly in on it from the top down is crazy. And I thought that it was interesting that today of all days, after we had just discussed this last night, that in the MLB, there was a guy, an umpire, fired for allegations that he was in on whatever he happened to be in on. And this wasn't even allegations of him fixing games or whatever. This just so happened to be the idea that he had a gambling account associated with a professional gambler that was betting on MLB. Like, that you cannot have any association with it whatsoever. And then Roger Goodell addresses the idea today. This is what I'm getting at. The reason why I brought this up last night and wanted to talk about it and get your guys' thoughts, and we're about to read your guys' comments here. This has gotten to such a point that Roger Goodell now has to address this at the State of the Union, so to speak. This has gotten to be such a big topic that not only is it dominating your social media feed, not only is it dominating the storyline going into the Super Bowl, most people right now are talking about the idea of the refs having impact on the Super Bowl more than they're talking about the matchup itself. And it's gotten to the point now where it's gone all the way up to the top, where Roger Goodell has to talk about it. Continuing on in that article, it stated that Goodell pointed to the Chiefs' performance in one-score games this season, 11 of their 17 games being within one score. He said, quote, I think that talks about the competitiveness of our game and the importance of how we officiate it, but also the competitiveness of how we play it, he said. The long and short of it was basically he shot down any idea that there's favoritism being, utilized towards the Chiefs in these football games. And the one thing we talked about last night that I am of the utmost belief in finding it to be necessary is further technology being implemented into the football game. It goes far beyond the Bills. It goes far beyond the AFC Championship. It's got everything to do with the game itself. It's 2025. The idea that the NFL has not implemented further use of technology to make the game better and more accurate in terms of the way it is called and ruled is asinine. And the idea that it has to take a dynasty like the Chiefs or a play like the tush push on the fourth down in the AFC Championship, the idea that it has to take these moments or these series of moments to come together for this to be on the topic of conversation list is insane to me. Why isn't it just already done? Why would you not just go out of your way without having to have a reason to do it? Why would you not just implement these things to begin with to make the game better? Because the public perception right now, and we're about to read, your guys' comments on my show last night. I was flicking through them a little bit earlier. I wanted to save most of them for a raw reaction, but I was flipping through them. Man, there was a lot of you guys, and not just the general public, a lot of you guys right here that tuning into the show that just think that, man, there's something up here, right? And the ability to implement technology to eliminate at least part of that speculation, I think is worth it in itself, even beyond how much it will help the game in terms of the accuracy and in terms of the overall idea that every single game is being called, officiated, ruled, resulting in the outcome that should be resulted in. Like that, to me, it's necessary. But it also, the benefit of it is it will eliminate the idea that a lot of people have right now that there's something nefarious going on behind the scenes. What I found to be interesting is that the Bills game in particular on Sunday afternoon in the AFC, or Sunday evening in the AFC Championship, I didn't think that game in particular was one that was so egregiously officiated that it resulted in what it resulted in. There were two plays, and both the plays were ruled on the field as one thing. And the reason why they were upheld is because there wasn't enough evidence to overturn it. The one was the catch by Xavier Worthy. Do I think it was a catch? No. Here's the problem. Nobody's known what a catch is since the league was invented. We go back to the Dez Bryant catch however many years ago. Still to this day, nobody knows whether or not Dez Bryant caught the ball or not. I mean, it's just nobody knows what the hell a catch is. The idea that if you have two toes in bounds, it's a catch. But if you click both your heels in bounds, like you're Dorothy from Wizard of Oz, that's not a catch because your feet come down. Me trying to explain it right now, how stupid do I sound? That's a legitimate rule. If you catch the ball on the sideline and tap both your toes in bounds, it's a catch. But if you catch the ball on the sideline and you tap both of your heels in bounds, but then your feet come out of bounds and land out of bounds, it's not a catch. Or if you tap one foot in bounds twice, it's not a catch. So say you catch the ball and you have one foot down and then you're hit and you bounce out of bounds and you nail that same foot back in bounds again. That's considered not to be a catch. We have no idea what a catch is. So that in real time, that ball was ruled a catch by Xavier Worthy. And based on the replay, the ball didn't move. There was nothing crazy that stood out. And because of that, it was just easier to just go and say, yep, ruling on the field stands. But like I said earlier, or like I said last night, if they had ruled it incomplete, it was 1,000% going to be upheld as incomplete. And then we go to the fourth down with Josh Allen. I mean, remove your bias. Nobody on earth wanted Josh Allen to get that first down more than me. I mean, come on, you guys know it. You know it. I've seen that play be dissected 1,000 different ways from 1,000 different angles. I've seen people put in the line. People are putting in like a digital line. It is so damn close. Are you guys really that shocked that they just went with the ruling on the field? Because 99 out of 100 times, if it's just easier to go with the ruling on the field because of a lack of evidence, they're going to go with the ruling on the field. Think about it from a jury perspective, beyond a reasonable doubt. Right? If you're ruling, so say that you're facing a jury and they have to dissect that footage. Is there a reasonable doubt that he didn't get the first down? Like, can you definitively say that he got it or he didn't get it? No, you can't. And because of that, unfortunately, the way things are set up right now, because of that, you have to go with the ruling on the field. It's the only way to just keep the game going. Unless you can rule beyond a reasonable doubt that it was the other way and not what it was ruled on the field, they are always going to go with what was ruled on the field. So once again, similar to the catch, if they had ruled that a first down, it was going to be upheld as a first down. Now, does it absolutely blow that the Bills were on the wrong end of both of them? Yep. Is it classic Buffalo that they happen to be on the wrong end of both of them? Yep. Do I think it's insane that the Chiefs somehow always find a way to be on the beneficial side of all these things? I mean, it's crazy. Yeah. But once again, the Chiefs scored 32 points in this game. They hadn't done that all year long. Dalton Kincaid dropped that pass at the end. The Bills had 3 minutes and 33 seconds. So for all of those people who thought the script was in on the Chiefs to win it, did the script write in a Dalton Kincaid catch and Josh Allen not being able to go down and get a field goal with 3.5 left? I mean, I don't think so. I just don't think so. Even beyond the failure to convert on that fourth down, the Bills had that game tied up, and the Bills had that game with the ball in their hand to go and tie it or win it at the end as well. And it didn't happen. Now, would we feel a lot better post-game if the technology was in place to have confirmed whether or not Josh Allen got that first down? I know I would. I think a lot of us would. If we could sit here right now and say, hey, based on the chip in the ball and the micro cameras on the sideline to determine whether or not the crown of the ball passed over the pylon or the first down line, we could sit here right now with a clear conscience on either end. And that's what needs to happen. And a lot of people, this is what I don't get. I've seen a lot of Chiefs fans online. Another rule changed in the NFL. Bills are going to have another thing benefit them. How many things in the NFL? How many different rules are the NFL officials going to change to help benefit the Bills? And it's like, this is benefiting everybody. I mean, my God, the Bills, the overtime rule in the playoffs got changed because of the 13-second game. What do you know? The Chiefs go to overtime last year in the Super Bowl. Could have been beneficial for the Chiefs, right? I don't think it really wound up mattering because of the field goal that Kansas City or San Francisco settled for a field goal. But still, it could have ended up mattering for Kansas City. It's beneficial for everybody, including the first down line. It's beneficial for everybody. Don't we want the game to be like, don't we just want it to be more streamlined? And don't we want it to be more sensical beyond middle-aged men with sticks and chains? So let's go and talk about some of the comments that we saw posted on last night's episode. So if you didn't watch last night, we talked about this topic for like 45 minutes. And I told you guys to leave a comment in the comment section as to what your guys' overall thoughts were on this. Because all throughout the past week here, I've just been seeing so many people discussing this topic. And as you saw just this afternoon, it's worked its way all the way up the ladder to where Roger Goodell was asked about the idea of the Chiefs getting favoritism from the league and from the referees. And I asked you guys to leave comments, and you guys did. So let's go take a peek. Real Dan Echo kicks us off. He goes, Bot, I can sum up everyone's frustration. He goes, 1, on 50-50 calls, it almost always benefits KC. Was the same for Brady's Patriots. 2, Taylor Swift brought in $331.5 million in extra revenue to the NFL, meaning Chiefs are good for business. 3, gambling. Naive to think corruption's not possible when Vegas is involved. For the NFL is legally designated as sports entertainment, an open secret. Only the WWE and roller derby also use that classification. This almost gives you legal license to fix outcomes. Most fans don't believe the NFL is scripted, but more of a soft fix for favorable teams. All right. So here's the idea. Here's the one thing you have to ask yourself. There's 32 teams in this league. All are independently owned. The idea that the league is in on benefiting the Chiefs and the Chiefs alone would require 31 teams to come together and unanimously decide on the idea that at the end of the year, the Chiefs are going to be the team that is the benefactor of all of the close whistles, all of the close calls, and ultimately game-deciding plays. 31 teams would have to come together and say, hey, you know what? That team in Kansas City that everybody's looking to dethrone, that everybody's sick and tired of watching win, we're all going to come together and help them continue to win. Once again, I'll say this to you. There's no arguing that Taylor Swift's great for business. I mean, it's a match made in heaven for the NFL. There's no doubt about it. And would they love to see Taylor Swift, in the press box at the Super Bowl? Of course they would. But once again, Josh Allen had the ball with 3.5 minutes remaining in the AFC Championship. They had all the power in the world to eliminate the idea of Taylor Swift being, up in the booth for the NFL at the Super Bowl. The Bills had 3.5 minutes to take that completely off the table, and they couldn't cash in on it. Drop ball, inability to execute the tush push, not just on the 4th down call, but on the 2-point conversion as well. Lack of creativity on those play calls, going back to the well one too many times when it was clear and obvious it wasn't working. Now you bring up the gambling aspect of things. And so the idea of the gambling aspect, this is why I think it's never been more important than ever to have the technology in place. Because when you are accepting of the amount of betting that's currently going on with the league, when you have deals with DraftKings and FanDuel and whatever else, when you are as accepting of it as you are currently, transparency has to be at the forefront. And this is why the implementation of the technology that I keep hammering, the idea on, that's why it's never been more important than ever. Because more people are questioning these things because of the amount of money involved on a week-to-week basis. And when you kind of pair that with the social media aspect of things, this is why it's felt like it's never been louder than it is right now. This is why it's only in the best interest of the NFL and all of the fan bases combined to go out of your way as much as possible to make sure that the game is officiated to the best degree possible. And right now, the NFL, I just don't think that they can confidently say that it is. I just don't think that you can confidently, as it stands right now, say that it is being officiated to the best degree that it possibly can. Now, don't get me wrong. It's like, does the NFL probably love the idea that Taylor Swift is at the Super Bowl and the Chiefs have the history on their side, the 3P? I mean, they probably do. It's great for business, but it doesn't mean that it's being pushed towards the forefront on purpose. Because if that was the case, then why wouldn't the Dallas Cowboys be hovering around a Super Bowl every other year or so? Right now, out of all 16 teams in the NFC, the Cowboys have the longest drought in terms of reaching an NFC championship. Don't you think with the amount of influence that Jerry Jones has on the league, don't you think that America's team, the wealthiest and most well-known sports brand on the entire list of sports teams in this country, don't you think that they would be pushing a little bit more for them to be a bit more involved than they have been? They have the longest drought in the league currently in the NFC in terms of conference championship appearances. They haven't made it since the 90s. So the idea that Kansas City of all teams, to me, this is what the other thing too. It's like all of these owners would have to come together. They have to come together and be like, you know what? I like that Mahomes guy and that Reed guy and that Kelsey guy. Let's send them to another one. Right? 24 what? Saying 100% correct. There were some bad calls, but this game got lost by us, period. And that's how I kind of see it. Every game's got good calls and bad calls. And I got to tell you, once again, going back to that fourth down, it was so close. I don't even know how bad of a call it was. It was all going to come down to what they ruled on the field. If they ruled it a first down, Bills continue on. There was also 13 minutes remaining in that game. The Bills had it tied after that point of the game. The Bills had the ball in their hand with the ability to go and tie it and win it again after that point in the game. And this is why I struggle with comments like this. They didn't come up short at all. Everyone saw the two plays. I don't know how you can say that. How can you say the Bills didn't come up short? When you run the tush push in that moment, I said this last night, you're leaving it up for interpretation. When the play hasn't worked all night, and when it has worked, it's been this close. It worked one time legitimately. The only other time it worked is when Allen leaped over the pile and he fumbled. And how the hell he got the ball back, I'll never know. Why they continued to run that play when it didn't work is beyond me. So when you risk trying the biggest play of the game, when you risk trying to convert on the biggest play of the game with that play once again, you're leaving it up to interpretation, because all game long it's been either very close or unsuccessful. And they left it up for interpretation. This is why I don't understand how you could think that there's some sort of ruse going on in terms of favoring the Chiefs. Had they just ran the ball there with Cook and gotten a legitimate first down, the game rolls on. There's no way that anybody would know, hey, the Bills are going to run a tush push and they're going to be a centimeter short. When that happens, make sure that the Chiefs are the benefit from it. Narham saying, I disagree with Zbot. I have zero doubt the AFC Championship game was rigged. Worthy catch at our 3-yard line was not a catch. McDermott challenged it. You could see the ball hitting the ground. It was indisputable. They reviewed it and still called it in favor of KC. I mean, come on. That pass was a 3rd and 5. KC would have kicked the field goal since they clearly didn't convert the third down. But instead, the refs gave them the conversion, which put KC at a position to score a TD. Once again, it just came down to the idea that the ruling on the field stood. I don't look at that as being indisputable. Yes, it hit the ground. But how many times have we seen these plays where the ball is pinned against the ground, but they have their hand on? Do I think it was a catch? No, I don't think it was a catch. I certainly don't. But they ruled it a catch on the field. And once again, nobody knows what a catch is. It is absolutely infuriating. It is absolutely infuriating. And this is the other thing, too. Bill Bond is bringing up. Everyone's acting like that play for Xavier Worthy. Was it really 3rd and 5? Because I don't remember it being 3rd and 5. Hold on. Let me look this up. So it was 3rd and 5. So 3:10 remaining, 3rd and 5. All right. So that's interesting. I forgot it was 3rd and 5. Wasn't there a flag thrown on that play anyways? Yeah, that's why I remember not really caring about this. There was a flag thrown on the play. There was a flag on Buffalo thrown on the play. So this is why, once again, that play to me, it didn't really change the game a whole ton to me. Plus, the Bills went down immediately after that score, and they scored. The Bills scored immediately after the Mac Hollins touchdown, the incredible score. They got them to 16 points. So, yes, it was 3rd and 5. But if we go back to the point that was being made on the YouTube comment here from Narham here, which I appreciate the comment. He's saying KC would have had to have kicked the field goal there. No, it would have been a first down for Kansas City on the flag. There's 3 minutes left. They're on the 20. I mean, maybe they have to settle for a field goal, but they still had a full set of downs. And in all likelihood, with the 3 minutes left, they were running far more time off the clock, probably disallowing the Bills to go down and do what they actually wound up doing. Right? They went down and scored a touchdown right before the half. So to me, that was kind of a wash. And there was 2 plays, really. There was 2 plays. It was that play, which the Bills scored right afterwards, and then it was the first down, not first down. And once again, the Bills had that game tied at 29-29, and then they had the ball with 3.5 left to go down and tie it or win it. There was one more comment. I don't want to go nuts on this. I thought it was interesting. Wanted to get your guys' thoughts. Because the amount of discussion I've seen surrounding it is crazy. But I saw some comments kind of questioning the idea of the technology being implemented. So, like, for instance, right here, we have Barry coming in. He's saying, well, good in theory, I don't think an electronic football is practical. A player is down when maximum forward progress is made. When does that happen? We can see it. How will an electronic football know when the play is over? It can't see or measure where your elbow, knee, or buttocks hits the ground. How does it know when to stop measuring? If synchronized with the whistle, that is delayed by a second as evidenced by the time clock, given the maximum forward progress. What if the player is down but continues to advance the ball via stretching? So, yeah, there's a ton of things involved, obviously, right? And once again, the implementation of technology isn't going to immediately eradicate all of the officiating issues. There's still going to be issues. You can't implement technology that's going to tell you what a catch is. You can't implement technology to show you whether or not a player's knee was down before fumbling or not. You know, I mean, there's still going to be elements of the game that are going to be left up to the interpretation of the refs. But I think it's a terrific, these are terrific questions being asked by Barry. My response would be, one, I think it would be something that the kinks would have to be worked out over time. They would just have to be worked out. It's something that you implement and you use it as a tool to help you. So in that particular moment in the Bills game, you go and use the tool to see, based on the measurement of the chip in the ball and whatever you have on the sideline to measure it, you see whether or not the ball at any point crossed it over. You can then pair that up with the time. So you can pair that up with when the whistle was blown. So if we're talking about forward progress, you can pair up the technology. So say you pair up when the ball either did or didn't cross over the threshold. You pair that up with the clock, the game clock, and then you pair that up with when the whistle was blown, right? So forward progress is something that you're talking about here, right? If the whistle was blown and the ball never crossed over that line based on the chip in the ball, then it's not a first down. There's a million kinks that have to be worked out, I'm sure. But wouldn't you rather have more at your disposal than not? It's kind of like when you go out in a snowstorm. Wouldn't you rather have more layers on with the idea that you can take some off if it's not as bad as you thought it was? You can never put more on. You can always take it off. So you might as well be prepared. So you might as well have more at your disposal. Maybe it doesn't work all the time. Maybe it's not the infinite solution for everything. But if you have one more tool at your disposal as a solution, well, then wouldn't you want to utilize that? I go back to the sky judge thing as well. That needs to be utilized far more. So the idea of that, like we see a missed face mask call, like we saw in the Rams-Vikings game earlier in the year, where everybody knew there was a missed face mask call, to the point where the announcers are blatantly bringing it up and talking about it. But then all of a sudden you just hear them say, well, they missed it. You can't review it. Why can't you review it? Why can't you review it? If a play is so blatant, if a call or no call is so blatant, why can't you review it? So my 2 requests would simply be to utilize the sky judge more. And then the technology that you have in place that they've been talking about for the last decade that other leagues are currently using right now. You pair these things together, and I just can't help but think that it's going to create a better game. right? I just can't help but think that the more you have at your disposal, the more likely you are to get these calls accurate. It's not going to be 100% foolproof, but nothing is. And right now, it would immediately be better than what they already have. What they have right now are a bunch of guys standing on the sideline looking in like this and saying, what do you think? What do you think? Hey, let's bring in the guy with the big stick and the big chain and let's just see what they think. I mean, wouldn't you rather have the technology to reference off of, even though it might not be 100% foolproof? More reference points. Get the sky judge more involved. I thought this was so funny, by the way. Joe Mannix coming in, he's saying Chipgate. Yeah. No, I know. I saw, there was a comment in here on the YouTube that I saw where they were saying how that will be the next thing, where they'll be saying that the chip was benefiting the Chiefs or whatever. I mean, I just think it's so funny. I just want a better game. And it's not even anything to do with the Chiefs. I'm just so sick and tired of the main storyline being the refs. I mean, guys, I got to be honest with you. Even if you wholeheartedly believe the refs completely hosed the Bills and that's why they lost the AFC Championship, it's not a good look on any of us when you go online and blame the loss on that. When you factor in that the Bills have played the Chiefs 4 times in the playoffs, they've allowed 33 points on average against them. They've lost all 4. The defense has not played well in any of the games. I don't know. I think it's a bad look on us to sit back and say, hey, man, if the Bills got that fourth down conversion, from the refs, Bills would have won. Oh, if Xavier Worthy, if that ball was ruled an incompletion, the Bills would have won. Once again, I go back to those 2 plays in question. The Chiefs would have had a first down after that catch was ruled for Worthy. They would have had a first down with 3 minutes left before half, and the Bills scored immediately after that play going into half. So it kind of washes out. And then that 4th down play, yeah, could the Bills have gone down and extended the lead? Yeah, it would have been huge. But at the end of the day, the Bills had that game tied, and they could have stopped the Chiefs from taking the lead. They didn't. The Bills had the ball with 3.5 left to go down and tie the game and take the lead. They didn't. And they had the opportunity to do that last year as well, and they didn't. So I just think it's a bad look on us going online and blaming it on the refs when it's been 4 cracks here and the Bills haven't been able to keep the Chiefs off of having their best offensive performance of the year in almost every single one of these games. I'm not going to sit here and deny the idea that if the Bills would have gotten the first down on that play, it could have changed the outcome. It certainly could have. But once again, it was all going to come down to the ruling on the field. And unfortunately, to those people, the people who don't think that play was close, I just don't know how you don't think it was close. They just went with the ruling on the field, and it sucks. But I do hope that what comes of this is positive, and I do hope that what we see in the future here are better ways to determine the outcome of these individual plays that ultimately help determine better outcomes of these football games. James Payne coming in, he's saying, you don't need a gambling account to be on the take from whoever. I just, the idea that all these guys that allegedly would be in on it, so to speak, it's just like the amount of guys involved. I mean, if you ever think about the amount of secrecy that would have to be involved from top to bottom, it would be impossible. It would be impossible. And I think it really just boils down to, like, you're like me. You're just so sick and tired of the Chiefs. You're trying to find a way to explain away what the hell they're doing right now. I mean, I get it to some degree. I just don't see how it's remotely possible. Nor do I see how it benefits anybody. How does the league benefit from this, other than the Taylor Swift element of things? Like, the Bills just had the highest rated AFC Championship game of all time against the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game. That was the most viewed AFC Championship game of all time. The Bills are a ratings powerhouse. The ratings would have been no worse this upcoming Sunday if the Bills would have made the Super Bowl against the Eagles. The ratings, you could make a solid argument that they would have been better. Because there's a million people right now trying to tell you that they're not going to watch the Super Bowl this year because the Chiefs are in it. How many people would have tuned in to see the Bills get a crack at trying to win their first ever Super Bowl title? How many people would have tuned in for that? Maybe there's a million or two more that tune in for Taylor Swift. Okay, maybe. But would it be worth risking the entire integrity of the league over? I just don't see it. I don't see it. I don't know how it benefits them that greatly. The Chiefs already got to the AFC Championship and got on the biggest viewed game of the year, and we know that the Bills are a ratings powerhouse. The Bills get ratings unlike any other. The ratings would have been through the roof if the Bills made the Super Bowl. I don't know how it benefits the NFL to this insane degree, having the Chiefs move on. If anything, you could argue that it's hurting them. How many people are you seeing right now online telling you, I don't really care about this game. I don't really plan to watch it. And even from my perspective, like I told you at the top of the show, Bills sour grapes aside, it just doesn't feel like Super Bowl week this week. Between the Luka Doncic trade and the Myles Garrett news today, like it just doesn't feel like anybody cares about the bowl this year the way that they have in the past. And I think that if the Bills were in it, once again, bias aside, I think a lot of people would have had a ton of interest in the idea of the Bills going and having the ability to win their first ever Super Bowl in franchise history. First time back there in over 30 years. Josh Allen with the ability to win one for the first time. One of the most highest scoring offenses in the league against the best running back in the league. I don't know. Food for thought. James Payne coming back in, and he's saying Jerry Jones and other owners have no betting stake. No, but they all 32 teams have a stake in the game in terms of the more success that they have, the more that their pockets are going to get lined. The farther you go in the playoffs, the more you're making money as an owner. So the idea that they're all sitting together and allowing one franchise to take all of the fame and recognition and spotlight and the championships is crazy. Nobody likes the spotlight more than Jerry Jones. You don't think that he wants to be on the top spot? They have the longest championship drought in the NFC right now. And there would be no incentive to go and get, like for the Bears, like what would be the incentive to go and get a Ben Johnson if it's just going to be the Chiefs to win every year? Like what would be the incentive? What would be the incentive for the Bills to go and get Myles Garrett if that's what it is? Richie coming in. To think money and Swift isn't incentive to get KC there is insane. Everything is about money, especially in the NFL. The what's a catch convo about the rules is just one example of how it leaves it up to being subjective. Yes, but it's been subjective forever. And once again, there was one play in that game, one play that came down to the question, what's a catch? And the Chiefs would have had a first down anyways off the first down. And the Bills scored immediately after, and the Chiefs didn't touch the ball again in the first half. So it was a wash. It did, in my opinion, that had no impact on the game. It was a wash. Because if the Xavier Worthy throw did not count, it would have been first down for Kansas City with 3 minutes left. They probably would have ran the clock all the way down, and the Bills arguably wouldn't have had 16 points going into half. They would have had less. And the Chiefs still could have put a touchdown on the board with less time on the clock for Josh Allen to go and get that touchdown with Mac Hollins. And look, I'm no idiot. Like I said earlier, do I think that the NFL loves the idea that Taylor Swift is involved with the modern day dynasty of the Kansas City Chiefs? Of course they love it. Of course they love it. But like I just said, I don't think the ratings were taking a hit if the Bills won that game and moved on to the Super Bowl. I just don't think they were. I think you can make an argument they would have been better. I mean, the Taylor Swift thing too here, it's kind of ran its course. Like it was cool and fun when it was new. It's not new anymore. Does anybody really care that Taylor Swift is in the press box anymore? No one really cares anymore. When it initially came about, it was like the biggest story on the planet. Taylor Swift dating Travis Kelce. There she is. But the more it became commonplace, the more really people stopped caring. Yeah, they still show her in the booth every now and then during the game, but like no one really cares anymore. And the NFL, like, even if the whole goal was to get as much out of Taylor Swift as possible, like, wouldn't you have argued they've done that by now? How much more is there to get out of it? And do you just continue to keep doing it? I mean, what if Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift get married? Just going to keep putting Kansas City in the Super Bowl for a decade? I mean, I understand what you're saying. There's certainly been a financial benefit to the NFL from this, no question. But once again, if it was all about the financial benefit, then I don't think that you would single-handedly take small market Kansas City and prop them up on the pedestal. You wouldn't have the Jets and the Giants be the two most dysfunctional teams in the NFL, in the biggest market in the league. The Jets have the longest playoff drought currently in the NFL, in the biggest media market in the entire league. If it was all about money, you would not have the Jets at the dregs of the league alongside the team that shares a facility with them in New York as well. You wouldn't have Dallas have the longest NFC championship drought in the league. Don't you think the Chargers would be a bit better out in LA? I don't know. I mean, I get what you're saying because it's there. In hindsight, we're able to look at it and say, well, T Swift is involved and, there's money involved. I'm not saying they're not benefiting from it. Of course they're benefiting from it. But are they benefiting from it enough to where it would be worth risking the entire integrity of the nation's most popular and lucrative sport? Because the second that came out from one of the multiple millions of people that would have to be involved in on this ruse, the second that came out, the league crashes down. It crashes. It would take a generation to build back up the goodwill of something as dumb as this, bringing it all the way down. Tommy coming in. If the O gets the job done the last 2 years, we ain't complaining. I mean, once again, if the Bills with 3.5 minutes left, if Josh Allen goes down and has a legacy drive, if Dalton Kincaid catches that ball, what are we sitting right now talking about? Certainly not the failed tush push on 4th down or the Xavier Worthy catch. We're not talking about it. We're not. We're talking about Josh Allen putting together an all-time drive. We're talking about one of the best catches in playoff history, one of the best plays in playoff history, that Josh Allen and Dalton Kincaid connection. We're talking about the Bills going to the Super Bowl for the first time in over 30 years with the potential to win their first ever championship. What are we talking about last year if Tyler Bass makes that kick? What are we talking about last year if Josh Allen hits Stephon Diggs over the middle or doesn't get hit by Chris Jones and hits Khalil Shakir in the end zone? What are we talking about? They were 2 for 6 on that tush push. How you kept going back to it, I'll never know. I'll never know. James Cook was running the ball like a man possessed. Didn't touch the ball on that final drive. Didn't give him the ball on any of those 4th and shorts. They had the game tied. They had the ball at the end of the game with a chance to win it. Completed one pass on that drive. One pass. And it was a screen route on 3rd and 10 to arguably your slowest receiver. Maybe that had something to do with it more than the ruling on the field stands on the Xavier Worthy catch. Richie Fresh. End of the day, the gray area of rules, what's a catch, makes it subjective. Wink, wink. NFL loves narratives. Watch next year. Bills go to the Super Bowl in the last year of old stadium, new stadium promo. Hey, listen, if it winds up being, if it really is a script, sign me up for that script then. Man, oh man, I'll be reading that script like Martin Scorsese. That'll come out like a blockbuster Christopher Nolan, IMAX, Oscar-worthy film. I mean, I would love it. I get, once again, I'm not denying any of the things that are coming up here. Like the idea that there's a lot of gray areas in the NFL, there is. Maybe more than any other sport. With the catch, right? The rulings on the field in terms of where the ball is spotted, right? Whether a foot is in bounds on a catch, whether a knee is down on a fumble. There's a million things that other sports don't have to deal with because of the nature of this sport in particular, the way it's played. But to think that these gray areas are completely predetermined to go in Kansas City's favor, when you can never quantify whether or not there's going to be a gray area in the game or not, because once again, let's just rule out the catch thing, because the Bills score immediately afterwards with Mac Hollins. So let's just rule the catch thing out, because they would have had a first down anyways on a flag. And even though the catch wound up standing, Mac Hollins scores afterwards, the Chiefs don't touch the ball again in the first half. We move on. Even if it does come down to that tush push, once again, Was the idea going into the game that the Bills were going to have the worst success rate that they've had all season long on that play? It was going to come down to that play, and they weren't going to convert on that play. The Bills were 28 of 30. According to Tony Romo on the broadcast, the Bills were 28 of 30 going into that AFC Championship game on the tush push. And the two failed conversions had successful conversions on the following attempt. So in reality, they were batting pretty much 100 all year. They were successful 2 out of 6 times in that game on the play. And in 2 of the most critical moments of the game, they went back to the well on it, and it did not work. They did it on the 4th down or on the 2-point conversion. It didn't work. And they went back to it again. And all game long, Romo and Nance were saying that Spagnuolo was well aware of the idea that they always ran it to the left side. And what do you know? They stacked the box, and they were able to stop it 4 different times. And once again, the only 2 times that they did convert it, they barely converted it. The first time they ran it in the game was the most successful it was. They got it by about a half a yard. It was visible. The only other time that they converted on it was when Josh Allen leaped over the pile, and it was awful. I mean, it should have been a fumble. And once again, the idea that nothing went the Bills' way in this game is crazy. There were 5 fumbles in this game. The Bills recovered all 5 of them. When does that ever happen? The Bills also won the turnover battle in this game. They were the only team this entire playoff to win the turnover battle and lose the football game. I don't know. I just can't sit here and put the blame on that because it makes me feel like it's the coward's way out, in my opinion. The Bills had their chances. Richie's coming back in. Bot, we got nothing but love for you. But the thing with money gambling involved in the gray area rules that there's 0 chance of favors being done. 31 other owners get a paycheck too, just saying. Look, I'm not sitting here saying that there's absolutely unequivocally 0 error when it comes to this officiating situation. There's no way to rule that out. Throughout time here, has there been a beneficial call? I mean, we've seen it forever. The greats of the game typically get the beneficial whistle. Everybody always claims that LeBron James gets the beneficial whistle, right? You could argue that Josh Allen gets a beneficial whistle on some of these roughing the passer calls. And Josh Allen's been known to be the guy that when he gets hit, he sells it very well and gets the call. The better players often get the call. The better teams often get the call. So to think that there's 0, maybe, hey, Patrick Mahomes gets the call on the roughing the passer that maybe Bryce Young wouldn't. I'm not saying that that's not in existence. I feel like everybody knows some players are getting the call over others. But it's not just Mahomes. But once again, the idea that maybe Aiden O'Connell, when he gets hit on the same play, doesn't get the call that Mahomes does, I'm not saying that's right. It shouldn't be the case. But that's how it is in all of sports. It's always felt like the better team or the better player, the more popular player, always gets a little bit more of a beneficial whistle. But the idea that they get it every single time to the point that it dictates the outcome of 17 consecutive 1-score wins, the idea that it dictates the outcome, propelling them to 3 straight Super Bowls, now that's what I think is crazy. You want to say it dictates the outcome of one game here, one game, maybe. Once again, I mean, I can, we can go back to the Bills-Ravens game. That pass interference call on Tre'Davious White. Go back and watch it. I mean, I don't know. I'm just being honest. I don't know. In real time, I didn't think it was the right call. After watching it again, I don't think it was the right call. Benefited the Bills. And you're not hearing anybody bitch about that today. Why? Well, because it benefited the Bills. Go back and watch that play right before half. The throw to Keon Coleman. Flag on Tre'Davious White. That to me felt like mutual contact, and in all honesty, it felt like the argument could have been made that it was on Keon Coleman far more than it was on Tre'Davious White. Call went the Bills' way. They got the touchdown out of it. Bills ended up winning by 2 points. That had an influence on the game. And I'm telling you right now, that exact same play happened against the Chiefs, and the Bills lost by 2, and the Bills had that call flagged on them. Say that was Kyer Elam covering Xavier Worthy on that exact same play, and the Bills lost in the exact same fashion the Ravens did. Everybody today would be bitching about that call being made on the Bills. It all comes down to whether or not you were on the right side of it or not. And unfortunately, the Chiefs, they They've been on the right side of it, and they've also taken advantage of every opportunity that's been given to them. After the Bills failed that fourth down conversion, the Bills defense could have gotten a stop, They didn't. They went right down the field and scored a touchdown. Marched right down the field and scored a touchdown and got the 2-point conversion. The Bills had 2-point conversion opportunities in that football game. They failed on both of them. Right after that failed fourth down conversion, the Chiefs marched right down the field. They scored a touchdown, and they easily executed the fourth down conversion as well. Then the Bills tied the game at 29-all. The Bills defense could have gotten a stop. The Bills defense could have held the Chiefs from going down the field and scoring. The Bills special teams could have held the Chiefs from immediately starting in Bills territory. But what happened? Special teams, complete blunder, allow the Chiefs to field the punt and bring it all the way into Bills territory. The Chiefs get a field goal with ease. And then it sets the Bills up to go and either tie the game or win it. They complete one ball the entire drive, a screen pass, a big drop by Dalton Kincaid, and there's your ball game. Richie wraps it up by saying, my point, jokingly, was about promoting new stadium. I, as a Bills fan, want to win it because we earned it and not due to narrative. I'll be 100% honest with you. I don't think the NFL, I don't think the main narrative would be the idea that the Bills have to win it because the Ralph is closing, to be honest with you. If anything, you'd argue that they'd want to do it when the new stadium is open the following year, right? Really pump the idea of that new stadium being open, put eyes on it. You know what I'm hoping for, though? You know what I'm hoping for? My biggest hope ever is that next year, the final game ever at the Ralph is a home AFC championship game against the Chiefs, and the Bills finally get over the hump. That to me would be the greatest ending to this movie that you could possibly imagine. So if the script writers are really writing one up, man, wouldn't that be a hell of a way to write one up? The final game ever at the Ralph. Bills get the 1 seed for the first time under Josh Allen. They host the AFC championship. The Chiefs come to town looking to go and win 4 straight. The Bills finally get over the hump, and the final game ever played at the Ralph is the Bills beating the Chiefs in the AFC championship to go on to the Super Bowl. Oh, my God. Could you imagine? Fingers crossed. And hopefully, Myles Garrett is the differentiating piece that gets us to that moment. Ooh, baby. God, would I love that. Man, oh, man. All right, hey, 2.5 hours in the books. Appreciate you tuning in for every single minute of it. We had over 1,400 of you in here throughout the evening, heading into midnight here on the East Coast on Monday night, inching ever so closely to the Super Bowl on Sunday. And whether or not you want to watch it or not, you and I both know we're all going to watch it. And right now, the Chiefs are a 1-point favorite over the Philadelphia Eagles on BetUS. Over-under is 49, with the point total for each team being 24.5. I mean, I think the Chiefs are going to win. I really do. But I once again, I've said this before, at least with the Chiefs, if they're going to make it every time, at least the benefit we get from it outside of the awful Tom Brady, Tampa Bay Bucks Super Bowl between the Chiefs and the Bucks, we've gotten a hell of a game from these Chiefs. I think that this game is going to be no different. I think it's going to be a hell of a game. The Eagles are the better team. Are they going to be able to execute like the better team? That's the question. I thought the Niners were the better team last year. They didn't execute when it mattered most. Chiefs defense stood up and answered the call when it mattered most. They got it done. Can the Eagles finally flip the script? They have the better team, in my opinion. Are they going to play like they have the better team? The difference is they don't have the better coaching. And is that going to be the difference? We will find out on Sunday. If you want to get in on it, use the promo code YouTube150 on BetUS. That'll get you a 150% sign-up bonus, up to $2,000 on your first deposit, 125% bonus on your next 2 after that. Speaking of the Super Bowl, Rico and I will be joining you later on in the week to talk about the Super Bowl, give you our thoughts on the game. We'll do a little bit of a preview. And we've been waiting to do that season-ending recap that I keep referring to. So Rico and I likely are going to do that this upcoming week. Rico had plans on Friday night this past week, so we couldn't do it then, but we're hoping to do it this upcoming week. Kind of a season recap, get everybody in together, Rico and I, and kind of put a bow on the year, move into the Super Bowl, and then start getting after the offseason. That's how it goes. The train keeps moving. And like I said, I hope that train gets fueled up with the hope of Myles Garrett potentially being a Buffalo Bill. Could you imagine? We shall see. But for tonight, that is going to do it. Appreciate all you guys tuning in for another iteration of the Smoke Break. 2.5 hours in the books. We will talk to you later on in the week. On your way out the door, like button if you could, subscribe button if you could. And once again, all of the lines are up for the Super Bowl on BetUS. Get in on them using the promo code YouTube150. That's going to do it here on this iteration of the Smoke Break on the Buffalo Fanatics YouTube channel. Enjoy the rest of your Monday evening, folks. Can't wait to talk to you later in the week. Until then, much love as always, and go Bills.